they are covered by the SOC. A SOC basically looks like this. So it is a setup where monitoring happens mostly across 24/7. So in some cases it is not 24/7 and it could be in a limited hours, but mostly it is a 24/7 kind of a setup. So we have video walls, so there are analysts sitting and monitoring for cybersecurity incidents. So basically, any cybersecurity incident if occurs, so it is managed by the SOC. So it is a centralized place where all the stakeholders are are taken the cognizance of the event that has occurred. So all of these tasks of a incident, they are handled in a SOC. So it is also called as a security defense center, security analytics center, network security operations center, security intelligence center, threat defense center. All of these are nomenclature. So all of the big organizations, maybe corporate or maybe a department, so they have their own SOC. So all of these organizations, they are required under various uh, norms by the regulators also, like banks if we consider. So all of these banks are required, mandated to have a SOC by the RBI. So they have to maintain a SOC. Also, the other big organization having a lot of cyber assets, so they need to safeguard their cyber infrastructure, their computers, their network end devices. So everything that needs to be secured, safeguarded, so they maintain a SOC for it. Okay. So this is basically how a SOC looks like. Okay. So what all devices are covered under a SOC? So all of these web mail servers, the security, the logs of these servers, so they are very important. So this is they are pushed into the SOC. Okay, then there are IDS, IPS, VPNs. Then there are web proxy servers. There's access control. There's antivirus server. There's honeypots. So all of these some technologies also I'll be discussing later in this slides. So all of these devices, their control might lie with their application owner, but the cybersecurity part of this lies with the SOC. So basically, SOC monitors, it assesses, and it defends the cybersecurity space of the organization. The heart of SOC is a tool called as a SIM. So SIM is basically security information and event management tool. Okay, so it is the heart of a SOC. So SIM basically grasps all the logs. Okay, it has a set of rules inbuilt. So the analysts, they create rules in a SIM to detect various types of cyber attacks, where various types of threats they are detected in a SIM. So all of these devices, as you can see, so they generate a log and these logs are pushed into the SIM. So on a very, on a whole, we can say basically SOC has a SIM tool. So I'm trying to, just say at a very, very low level thing. Okay, so SOC is having a SIM. So SIM gathers, takes inputs of the logs, and in the output it creates alerts, it has reports and advisories. So SOC is a big thing. SIM is a tool which is used inside a SOC, but SOC has other things also. SIM is basically bare minimum thing that is required in a SOC. Okay, so why do we need a SOC? So what's the purpose? So we are discussing SOC, so there should be some purpose to it now. So first of all, we want to increase the detection ability. Suppose there is an organization, let's say a bank is there. Now there are ever increasing cyber attacks, as we know. So how do we detect that a cyber attack has occurred? We need specialized people, we need cybersecurity experts. So okay, so they continuously monitor the cyberspace of the organization. So they look for any breach, or maybe something which is not correct, which should not be inside the network, it is there. So for increasing the detection abilities, we need a SOC. So there is a report, M-Trends report as we call it. So that's by FireEye, a security vendor. So it says that the median dwell time is of 56 days in 2020. Now that means that the average attacker is going undetected on a network for under 2 months. Okay, so for a period of 56 days, the network has been breached, cyber attack has occurred, and it takes on an average 56 days to identify a cybersecurity incident. Okay, so this data is for 2020. Now in 2011, this data was 416 days. Okay, so about 416 days had elapsed before we could say, okay, a cybersecurity incident has occurred in a network. Okay, so this is a huge time, and just think of it, what havoc can a cyber attacker can cause if it's inside the network for above, in 2011 it was 416 days. Now it has come down to 56 days. It is still a lot of time. So about 2 months are there, and on an average it takes. So it might take more, it might take less. Okay, so we need to increase the detection ability of the organization to detect cyber attacks. Okay, so we need a SOC for that. Second of all, that is, we need to respond to these cyber security attacks. Okay, now we don't want the we don't want the adversaries to succeed. So we want to prevent that. Okay, so if a cybersecurity incident has occurred, we need to minimize the impact. Okay, so we need to increase our responding capability. Suppose there is a DDoS incident. Let's take an example. So a website has been attacked with a DDoS attack by a cyber threat actor. Okay, now we need to respond to that DDoS attack, and we need we should not we should have a minimum downtime. Okay, so we need to mitigate that DDoS at the best possible time. So increasing the responding capability is the second most important purpose of a SOC. Then there is a reducing the service disruption from security issues. So as I told, that if a DDoS attack is happening, so we need to reduce the downtime from the application. We need that the application should be available at all times for the actual users. Okay, so reducing the service disruption is the purpose, so for which we require a good and efficient SOC. Okay, then reducing the impact from a security compromise. Now a Ponemon Institute, this pegged the cybersecurity breach cost for a cybersecurity breach at $3.86 million. So it says that this much amount is lost. This is the financial impact of a cybersecurity incident. Okay, so this amount is huge for organization. So every organization having its reputation, so reputation is lost. So if a breach has occurred or a cybersecurity incident has occurred, so the financial impact, so this institute estimated it to be about $3.86 million. So that is huge. Okay, so we need to reduce these impacts. So we want that cybersecurity incident should not occur at first place. So if they are occurring, we need to get over them quickly. Okay, then we have enhancing of correlation potential. So basically we have a lot of security devices inside the organization. So all of these devices, they have their own task. Now we want that we should correlate between these devices. Suppose there is a cybersecurity threat actor. So suppose there is a threat actor. Now he is trying to scan an organization network. Okay, so he has found some vulnerability. Now he is trying that if some system is possessing that vulnerability inside a network, so he might scan the entire network of an organization. Now that IP, we found that this IP was found communicating some mail server a few days back. Okay, now these two are different logs. Okay, so they are generated from, say, two different devices. Now we need to correlate them. So if some IP that has been found doing some malicious things, we know its history. Okay, and it is again trying to enter a network, so we should find that thing. So there should be some intelligence inside our SOC. Okay, so some AI should be there so that the correlation can be done. So enhancing a correlation potential is a purpose for a SOC. Now, the last and foremost is the allowing for coordination of central security management. So there are a lot of stakeholders in an organization relating to, suppose there are application server for a website, there are servers for a mobile app. So all of these might be having different team owners. Now, if a cybersecurity incident has occurred and it has impacted some of or maybe all of the devices, then there's a lot of coordination required. So SOC is a central place where all the teams so they can coordinate in a efficient way. Okay, so these are broadly the purposes. So why do we need a security operations center? Then we'll be discussing what are the types of SOC. Okay, so there are basically two setups. So one is outsourcing, the second one is in-house, and there's a hybrid setup which in which we combine the benefits of all the these two options. So in the first one, in outsourcing of a SOC, so basically here the operational expenditure are much higher than the capex. So when we are outsourcing, we don't require very high initial investment. We leverage a MSSP model. So MSSP is a managed security service provider. So basically it's a security vendor, you can say. So they manage the SOC for an organization. Okay, so they bring in the experts, they bring in the technology, so they implement a SOC for an organization. So they might do at a remote location or they might do at the organization location. So basically, when we have a we lack a skilled staff in house, so we have to go for the outside experts. So in outsourcing model, so we leverage this MSSP, so managed security service provider. So the challenges that are faced in this kind of a setup is that we don't have a dedicated analyst from in-house. So our own, organization employee is not basically, experts and we are hiring. So that outsider might not know the best of the organization's interest and, the setup, the infrastructure. So all of the business concern, they they are better known to an employee and not to an and compared to an outsider. So we lack the understanding, we lack the basic business concerns and the infrastructure concerns, infrastructure setup. So what all devices are there? So it takes time for an outsider to grasp things. So he might not be knowing the business nitty-gritties well. So there will be different priorities. So this is a challenge that comes when we are outsourcing it. Then there is a lot of coordination required with that MSSP. So you can imagine that if a security vendor is there and he is managing everything, so there must be a lot of coordination. Okay. So in some cases, data is stored and processed outside also. So some organization might allow and some organization they cannot allow because of various guidelines and rules. Okay, so this data is stored and processed outside in some cases. In some cases it is inside also in this outsource setup. Okay, so this is the outsourcing of a SOC. Now the second option is we can have an in-house SOC. So in-house SOC, so we need a dedicated staff. We have the dedicated analyst working from the organization itself, so they have a better understanding of the business concerns. They know their infrastructure better. Then the data is stored and processed inside the organization. So there's a basically greater control over security and compliance. So as the organization itself, is handling the SOC, so there is a better, control over them. Okay, so they know it better. They have been through the organization from, so they are the employees, so they must be knowing better. Okay, now the primary challenge that is there in this kind of a setup is that we need to recruit basically. So we do not have some in-house skilled staff, so we need to either train them or recruit that kind of a skill set for the staff. Then it has a lot of capital expenditure at the first place, so we need a lot of cost for setting up. We need to buy some infrastructure, we need to buy space, we need to buy hardware. So a lot of training cost also is there. So a lot of cost is there initially. Okay, then the third challenge, which is a very important one, is because is that there is a very gradual rise in a SOC maturity. So SOC maturity comes very slowly, because as the analysts start working, they start working, so they will be knowing it better, so they are new. So they take time. So basically the maturity level of the SOC, it is attained at a slow speed. Okay, so this is a challenge in-house SOC. Now in a hybrid setup, we leverage basically the both good points of the outsourced one and the in-house one. Okay, so we can have the MSSP's staff and the organization staff working together. So they might be working 50-50 rate or ratio, or maybe whatever the ratio that is decided. So the skill set increases gradually for the in-house staff also. Okay, so we have our own infrastructure for setting up the SOC. So basically, we leverage both of the good and pros of all these two methods in the hybrid setup. Now we come on to the building blocks. So in building blocks, so we will be discussing people, process, and technology. So first we'll be discussing people. So we require a lot of roles are there in a SOC. So first, and the primary role is the analyst. So analysts are the people working round the clock. So they are doing real time monitoring. They do triaging. They do the incident analysis. So basically, all of the primary activities of the SOC, they are handled by the analyst or the incident responders, as we call them. So any incident that has occurred, so that will be handled by a analyst, SOC analyst. Then there is a thing called a cyber threat intelligence. Okay, so trending and intel is basically there are a lot of new cyber attacks that are occurring. Okay, so they have a different threat vector in each of these attacks. So cyber threat intelligence is basically gathering of new types of threat intelligence, new vulnerabilities that are there. So we need people who can do this kind of thing. Okay, so cyber threat intel, we need to collect it, we need to analyze it, and we need to distribute it also. So threat intelligence, for this we need people, and okay. So this is the second task in a SOC. Then there are SOC system admins. So there are a lot of tools inside a SOC. One tool, as I told you, is a SIM. There are other tools also. Okay, so we need system administrators for these tools. So we need to tune the sensors. We need to maintain them. We need to patch them also. So the SOC system admins is another role. Then there is SOC engineering. So there are a lot of tools that are coming up. So they're always ever changing. So we need a engineering team to deploy some new tools, some new tools which are latest, and having support for various types of cyber threat attacks. Okay, then there is a scripting or automation task. So we need to automate some manual thing. So SOC engineering is the team for this. Then ultimately that is a SOC manager handling all of these teams. So SOC manager sits at the top. There are all of these teams under him. So another classification for people we can do is the rainbow teams, as we call them. So you might have heard about the red team, blue team, and yellow team. So I'll be discussing this thing. So a red team is basically the offensive security people. So they try to attack an organization. So the basically, if you have heard about ethical hackers, so they are part of a red team. Okay, so they try to intrude into an organization to find the vulnerabilities. So they do it so that they can tell the organization, okay, these are the vulnerabilities, so this can be used by an attacker, so you need to patch them. Okay, so they exploit these vulnerabilities, they do penetration testing, so they are trying to intrude. So this is basically part of a red team. The blue team are basically the SOC analysts, as I told you. So they are basically the defenders. So they protect the infrastructure, so they respond to an incident. So these are the defensive. They come into the picture when the incident has occurred, or maybe they are trying to find an incident. Okay, so blue team is that. So they perform threat hunting also. So this threat hunting I'll be discussing in the next few slides. Okay. Then there's a yellow team. Yellow team are the SOC system admins team that I told you. So there are software builders, there are application developers, there are architects, and the system operation and maintenance team. So this is also one different type of a categorization for people in a SOC. Then this is a sample incident response lifecycle. I will be discussing this in detail. So as you can see, so these are the at the top there are the constituent IT assets. So all of the network IT infrastructure, so they basically generate a lot of logs. Okay, they are running and they are generating logs. So these all these logs are pushed into a SIM. Okay, so these SIM, so and other there are other tools also, same as the main tool. There are other tools also. Okay, so all of these things, the trending, the real-time monitoring, advanced analytics, correlation. So all of these things are done in a SIM. Now all these logs are being continuously pushed. Okay, then we have people doing the cyber threat intelligence. So we are gathering more and more threat intelligence. Okay, so that is also pushed into a SIM. Okay, then there are fusion analysts, trending analysts. So any new, what are the port trends as we call them? So any new port that is being scanned uh, of lately very high, at, compared to the usual behavior. So this intelligence, so all of this intelligence is fed into the SIM. Okay. Then there are incident that has happened. So incident reports are there. Okay, so these incident reports, they are also pushed inside the SIM. So all of the historical data is there. So we are having a current logs also. Then we are having current threat intelligence also. So all of these things, all of these three things, they are pushed inside a SIM. Now what happens is, there is an analyst working. So tier one analyst analyzes these all of these things. So it monitors the tools, it analyzes cybersecurity incidents, and they are handled. So if needed be, these some cases are escalated to a tier two analyst, and tier two, we might have three tiers also. So there are tier one analysts, there are tier two analysts, there are tier three analysts also in some cases. So that depends upon the organization, its setup. Okay, so mostly the cases are handled by the tier one analyst. uh, some cases which are not handled, so they are escalated to a tier 2 analyst. So tier 2 analyst, now he can do more of the investigation. He might capture some traffic. He might study the malware samples. Okay, so the in-depth analysis that is done for some cases by the tier 2 analyst. He also might coordinate and consult the system owner's team to fine tune the system. Okay, so if some cybersecurity attack has occurred and the organization defenses were breached, so what all changes we need to do to the tool setup so that this type of an attack doesn't occur again. So this is done by the tier 2 analyst. So basically at the end, we have the decision. So what do we basically need to do? So either we need to block it, we need to some deactivate some account. Okay, so we need to maybe continue watching the activity, or we might need to refer it to outside party. So all of these things. So this is basically a sample incident response life cycle. Okay, so this is how security incident are handled in a SOC. Okay, yes. Now I'll be discussing about threat hunting. So threat hunting is basically a practice of proactively searching for cyber threats that are lurking undetected in a network. Okay. So threat hunting, it is done by experienced cybersecurity analysts. Okay, so they basically assume that some cybersecurity attack has already occurred and it has gone undetected. Okay, so they assume that the cyber attacker is inside their network. So they assume basically the compromise has occurred. Now, if that has, if the defenses are breached and our tools are not able to detect it, so these threat hunting activity that is done, on a regular basis. Okay, so this is for finding those alerts which are those attacks which are missed. Okay, so there is a sample, cyber kill chain process also that is employed for threat hunting. So I'll just discuss it briefly. You can see these 7 stages of a attack. Okay, so this is Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain process. So this basically shows how a cyber attack is occurred and how it starts from a reconnaissance stage and ends at a maintain stage. Now, in a reconnaissance stage, so this is basically the first step in a hack, in a cyber attack. Okay, so basically, it is reconnaissance involves scanning. So an attacker might want to study the organization's network before he tried to attack it. Okay, so he might scan the network, he might find some ports, which all types of hardware is there. So all of these tasks are done in a step one called as reconnaissance. Then the second step is weaponizing. Now if the when the attacker has already studied the network, he knows he has built some picture inside his mind about about the network he is trying to target. Now, what he do is he in the second stage he might create a Leo document. Okay, so he might try to do phishing. He will first study that which type of organization is there. Suppose he is trying to attack a, let's say, a bank. So he might create a document, a Leo document that will include some information regarding some bank. Okay, then in the third stage, it is deliver. So he might deliver that phishing email to the organization's employees. Okay, so he will have a very catchy, eye-catching topic or subject so that the user clicks on it. So these three are the first three stages. So till this stage, the attack has not occurred. Basically, the attacker is not present inside the network. He is still outside. Okay. Now, when the user clicks on that phishing email attachment, you know, it gets executed. Okay, now this is the fourth stage, the exploit. So basically, here the malware is executed. The cyber threat actor is inside the network. Okay, the malware gets executed. This is the exploit stage. Then that malware might download additional malware. Okay, so it might want to download additional payloads also. So this is the fifth stage, that is control. Okay, so in this some maybe some he is trying to connect to the command and control server and download some additional malware. Then the next stage is the execute. So the attacker might do some lateral movement. He might move inside the network to other some systems or something, and it can also exfiltrate data. Basically, for this purpose he had attacked the organization and he has successfully completed his task. So this is the sixth stage of execute. Then the last stage is maintain. So he might leave some backdoor behind. Okay, so he might want to return, let's say about 6 months after. So he can leave that backdoor inside the network. Okay, and it also might want to connect to the command and control or the C2 server. So this is a basically 7 steps of a cyber kill chain process. Okay, yeah. So this was basically the people part. Now I'll be coming on the process part. So process for a SOC is basically the SOP. So standard operating procedure has to be there. So it basically spells out the roles and responsibility for all of the people involved in a SOC and what procedure has to be followed for monitoring. Okay, so it basically lays out the steps what that should be taken in an event of a breach. Okay, so how to escalate it, how to report it, and how to respond to that breach. So there are basically 4 processes. So business processes, technology processes, operational processes, analytical processes. So we need to create SOP for everything. Okay. So technology process might include, so there is a new employee joining, so we need a new system for that employee. So what all things have to be done before that employee uses that system. So we might want to bring the system in an AD under an AD server. We might want to install a antivirus server. So all of these steps that are to be done for that process, so that comes under the technology process. This is one just sample that I have just discussed. So there are operational processes, there are analytical processes. So analytical processes might include, suppose there is a DDoS attack happening. So how can an analyst, okay, ultimately say, okay, this is a high level DDoS attack. Okay, so there has to be some steps laid out. Okay, so this should be the minimum threshold, or this should be the minimum, criteria for declaring that attack to be a high level, or maybe a mid level, or maybe a low level. So SOP is required for all of the tasks that are there in a SOC. Okay, so third pillar is the technology. So these are all the tools, okay, that are there in a SOC. So there's a firewall, there's IDS, IPS, anti-spyware. So I'll just go on through one on one. So firewall is basically to block unwanted, connection. It might be stopping from. So it, only allowing some communication, some IPs to, enter, or maybe some blocking some. So firewall basically blocks unwanted connection. Then there is IDS, IPS. So IDS is intrusion detection system, and IPS is intrusion prevention system. Okay, so as their name suggests, so one basically detects an intrusion, one has an additional functionality of preventing also. Then there is anti-spyware. So anti-spyware, as we call it's an antivirus server. So we might have a central antivirus server. So updates are pushed onto the end network, end devices, through this anti-firewall server. Just a minute. Yeah. Then there is a rogue host detection. So rogue host detection, basically it's a software that scans the routers and subnet to detect any new system or a device that is found connected to a network. Suppose let's take an example of a bank. So there is a branch. So a branch is having, suppose, 10 systems. Now some employee unintentionally might connect his or her mobile phone to the desktop. Now that mobile phone might not be allowed to be connected according to the organization policy. Now this rogue host detection, they basically scan the network. So at a point, if that the mobile phone is connected, so this device might detect it, and it might create an alert. Okay, so rogue host detection is a that software. Then there's a policy auditor. So it's a tool that is used in security audits. So it checks whether the policies, or maybe the AD policy or any other policy, that is implemented properly or not. Then there's asset management. So basically, for the organization having the cyber infrastructure, so management of the assets. So every desktop, every server, it should be properly managed. It should be, inventory should be maintained, so that for patching, if some vulnerability comes up, we can patch all of the organization's devices. Remote forensics. So forensics is basically investigating in an incident. So remote forensics is suppose there is a SOC at location X. So they might want to remotely connect to a system. They might want to analyze what cybersecurity incident might have occurred in some cases. Okay, so remote forensics is basically a person trying to do forensics at a remote terminal. Okay, then there is application whitelisting. So there are websites there, in some organization policies there, to allow only some set of websites, and while not allowing or blocking other websites. So application whitelisting is that thing. Then there's patch management. So patch management is for all the new updates. All of the organization network must be patched. Then baseline monitoring. So baseline monitoring is there is a suppose there is a organization on a weekly or on a daily basis, the maximum amount of traffic at the router, suppose it is at 1 Gbps. Okay, so when on a daily basis, suppose it goes about to 1.2 or maybe 1.3 Gbps. So for a month, we study that network flow. Okay, so we create a baseline. Okay, so that is called a usual behavior. Okay, so the network flow should be between 1.2 to say 800 Mbps. If it breaches say 1.2 Gbps mark, so it is beyond the regular thing. So we might need to investigate what has happened. Okay, so that might be a behavior that should be there, but if it's not, then we need to investigate it. Then there is a DLP, data loss prevention. So organization data is sensitive, so we have DLP devices, data loss prevention devices, installed at the end network end devices and user systems, so that unintentionally or intentionally some sensitive data is not lost. Then there is a SIM I'll be taking up in next slide. Then there is a flow monitoring, so we monitor the router flow. Okay, we this is related to the baseline monitoring, you can say. Then there is packet capture, so we capture packets. So suppose there is a cybersecurity incident, we might want to capture packets related to some IP, okay, to investigate it further. Then there is a next gen firewall. So firewall, we know the functionality that it blocks unwanted connections. So next gen firewall is a firewall having capabilities of a IDS, IPS, and some other functionalities which are not in a basic firewall, but there are in a next gen firewall. Okay. Then there is a web application firewall. So web application firewall works at the application layer. Okay, so it only allow traffic on specific ports. Okay, then there is web proxy. So proxy server is basically for an organization to route their internet traffic from a single system. So they do not want multiple IPs, multiple public IPs, so they might use a web proxy server to route their organization internet traffic. Okay. Then there are honeypot. So honeypot is a it is a system that is intentionally kept vulnerable. Okay, so an organization might have a honeypot. So honeypot is basically a security device. So it is a basically a computer system, or maybe any software or any hardware. So it is intentionally kept unpatched and vulnerable. So it is there for the attacker to attack it. Okay, so this is used in generating cyber threat intelligence. So what all new methodologies are employed by the cyber threat attackers, so it is captured in a honeypot system. Then there are vulnerability scanners. So vulnerability scanners are basically tools used by the red team, so they scan the network for any vulnerabilities that are already known. Okay, so I'll be discussing SIM now. So SIM, as I told you, it's a security information and event management. Okay, so it supports threat detection and security incident response. Okay, so it basically it collects the logs in a real time. So it performs the historical analysis as well. Okay, so let me just zoom this image. Now, as you can see that these are the log sources. So there is firewalls, there are routers, there are IDS, IPS, there are antivirus servers. So all of these devices, they generate logs. Okay, so these logs are pushed into the SIM. Okay, so some people confuse the SIM with a centralized log collection server. So it is not a centralized log collection server. Okay, it collects log. One function of a SIM is for log collection. Okay, it is just a part of it, not the complete. So log collection, it is done by the SIM. Okay, then there are other things. Okay, so the historical analysis. So we might have some rules inside a SIM. Okay, so these logs, so they are run against some rules, and at the output we have all of these things. So we have alert feeds, we have visualization, we have cyber threat, cyber intel fusion, we have forensics. So all of these tasks are done by a SIM. Okay, so we basically in a SIM we ingest log, So we have some rules created. So suppose I'll just give you an example, you will better understand. Now, this is the goal. Okay, so we want to detect a brute force attack. Now, the trigger point for this will be if there are three or more failed attempts, login attempts in 1 minute from a single host. Okay, now in this case, the end device might generate a log that this device was, tried to log in and there were three failed attempts. Okay, so this can be a trigger for detecting this. So this might be a brute force attack. Okay, so these types of rules, they are created in a sim. Okay, so the logs are generated by the end devices, so they are matched against some rules, and if the rule matches, so we trigger an alert. Okay, so at the end, so the analyst might study that alert. Okay, if it was a genuine case, or it was a false positive, or it was a true positive. Okay, so this is basically a sim. So I'll just give another example in this rules. Suppose this last one. Okay, so alert when a single host sees an identified piece of a malware. Now we have a antivirus server installed in a end user device. Okay, now when the device detects some malware, okay, it should alert. Now it should alert when a virus, spyware, or malware is detected on a host. Okay, so this goal is achieved using this log sources. So antivirus server, okay, network anomaly behavior detectors, all of these generate logs and we detect this goal. Okay, so this is basically a sim. Okay, so yeah. Now there is another tool which is a very new tool. We call it a SOAR. So security orchestration, automation, and response. Okay, so in this SOAR, we basically are having next gen facilities. Okay, so it tries to automate some mundane tasks. I'll give you an example. Suppose there is a suppose there is an IP trying to scan an organization, suppose mail server. Okay, now we can create a rule. So if one IP scans one particular organization device 100 times in 1 minute on different ports, so we need to block that IP which is scanning. Okay, so this is basically a simple you know simple, you can say, a rule. So what happens before SOAR is that this triggers an alert in a sim. The analyst looks, investigates that alert. Okay, this IP was trying to scan the system, so it might create a request to the system admins to block that IP at the firewall. Okay, so this task, suppose it took maybe half a day, maybe 4 hours. Okay, now with what SOAR does is it automates these general tasks. Okay, now we might create an rule or maybe a flow in a SOAR that if an IP is trying to scan the some organization device 100 times, we need to block that IP at the firewall. Now all of these things can be automated in a SOAR. So earlier we need to manually investigate first and then create a request to the system administrators to block the IP at a firewall. Now this was taking time, so we need to we have done automation here, and now with this automation, we have a faster response time, we have higher analyst productivity. The analyst can now focus on more different alerts, and some general alerts can be automated. So security orchestration, automation, and response is a new type of tool that is employed in a SOC. Okay, then there are national and state SOC. So they facilitate coordination activities between multiple subordinate distinct SOC. So there can be various type of setups. So there can be sectoral SOCs. Okay, so one looking after a financial sector, one looking after maybe exchanges. Okay, one looking after, say, transportation sector. So these sectoral SOCs can then ultimately come under a national SOC. Okay, so yeah. So this is an example of a Andhra Pradesh Cybersecurity Operation Center. So it was set up in 2018. It works on the sidelines of the ICERT. So yeah. So basically, the SOC at a national or a state level, they might have more of a threat intelligence, better threat feeds. Okay, so they can disseminate to the sectoral SOCs or maybe to the low level organization SOC. So this is the role of a national and a state SOC. So this is all. So any questions I would like to take up now? Any questions are there?
Sir, I think that no one had any question.
Okay, sir. So thank you all for attending the session. Thank you.